about 1 in 10 shishito peppers is going to have sort of a hit of heat to it. It's sort of like playing Russian roulette, you know? Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Kenji. Today we're going to make some fried rice with chorizo, corn, and shishito peppers. This is one of my favorite flavor combinations. So we're starting with the chorizo here. This is Spanish style chorizo, so from Spain. So Spanish style chorizo is a dry cured sausage. So it's similar to salami in that it is pork that's seasoned, in this case with garlic and smoked paprika. And then it is cured, allowed to ferment, and then dried. And so in that process, it's never cooked. So this is still raw pork the same way that a salami would be. But because of that sort of aging and drying process and the salting process, it ends up safe to eat. However, we are going to cook it because what I want to do is render some of this fat out and use it to sort of season the rice. Fried rice, by the way, is sort of one of my go-to methods of using up a bunch of different ingredients in the fridge. In this case, it's selected ingredients, although I use it sort of as a leftover user-upper as well. All right. A wok, carbon steel. I'm going to put the chorizo in with a little bit of oil and just let it render a bit. At this stage, we don't need sort of like really ripping hot heat, you know. It's okay because the chorizo is going to sort of slowly render out and its fat is going to come out. In the meantime, I'm going to cut the kernels off of a couple ears of corn. I like to do this in a bowl. And what I do is I get the tip of my knife about halfway down and then I lift the corn up so that my knife doesn't sort of smash into the bottom. I know some people will recommend putting a second bowl sort of overturned in the bottom of this one, or Alton Brown recommends using a bundt pan. I don't have a bundt pan, so yeah, so I don't do it. No ifs, ands, or bunts. Turn this down a little bit so we're not smoking. All right. So, you know, one of the keys with a good stir fry, especially when you're working on a sort of home burner like this, is doing things in batches. So you don't want to overcrowd the pan. You don't want it to run out of heat, essentially. So we're going to cook our ingredients separately. So I got my chorizo rendered out, kind of crispy. I'm going to leave the fat in there, add a little bit extra, and then I'm going to get my corn in there. Corn, I find, is a real nice vegetable to do on the wok, especially at home, because it's very low risk of overcooking corn. You know, you can let it go for a real long time and let it get nice and deeply charred, and it's not going to turn real mushy the way like a green vegetable would. So we're going to let that corn sit there. It might pop a little bit and get a little bit of sort of caramelization on it while I finish with my other ingredients. So shishito peppers. Shishito peppers are a Japanese pepper. They tend to be real mild in flavor, almost look like the flavor of a green bell pepper or a poblano pepper. And in fact, if you don't have shishitos, you could use either one of those. However, about 1 in 10 shishito peppers is going to have sort of a hit of heat to it. So it's all, you know, people say when you eat these peppers, it's sort of like playing Russian roulette, you know. But we're mixing them all up, and they're going to go into the stir fry. So any heat they have is going to get mixed into the whole dish anyway. If you can't find shishitos, a real similar pepper would be a Spanish padron pepper. Padron. Similar size, similar flavor, similar sort of sometimes hot, sometimes not level. Also goes real well with Spanish chorizo and corn. Woo! I'm flying. All right. So our corn has a little bit of char to it. So I'm going to empty this out into the same bowl that I just had my chorizo in. Again, we're going to reheat our wok, add a little bit of fresh oil. And we're going to do our final ingredients, which are these shishito peppers and the whites of a couple scallions. This particular recipe is going to work in most types of woks, but I almost always recommend a carbon steel wok like this, partly because carbon steel has a really nice balance between sort of lightness. It's lighter than cast iron, but it has the performance of cast iron in that it'll get a sort of non-stick surface like this when you season it properly, when you heat it up properly before you start cooking it. It's also more durable than cast iron is, so cast iron has a tendency to sort of get brittle and crack, whereas carbon steel will warp and flex without cracking. And finally, if you like that wok hay flavor, the flavor of that sort of smoky flavor that you get from a high heat stir fry, part of that flavor comes from real high heat and from the flame kind of going into the wok, but part of it actually comes from reactions with the metal itself. So carbon steel, cast iron, they're reactive metals, and they will impart some flavor to the food that you won't get out of, say, a stainless steel wok or a non-stick wok. All right, so all of our flavoring ingredients are now cooked and ready to go. And now it's time for the rice. So this is rice that I cooked in the rice cooker yesterday and then had sitting out in a tray overnight. You know, the key with rice for fried rice is that you want it to be nice and dry. You don't want it to be you don't want it to be very moist. Freshly cooked is okay as long as you don't use too much water and as long as you sort of cook it right when it's been freshly cooked. If you let it start to cool down a little bit before it dries out, that's when it starts to sort of clump together, and you're gonna end up with well, rice that sticks together in the wok instead of being nice individual grains. The other trick you can do, if your rice still has like a few little clumps like this, what I do is I take a little bit of cornstarch, just a teaspoon or two, toss some on there, and then we can use our fingers to kind of break it up. And what that'll do is it'll coat each of the individual grains of rice so that they don't stick together as easily when we start stir frying them. Okay, so we're gonna break up the rice with our fingers a little, and then straight into a ripping hot wok. The other key with fried rice is that you don't want to be stingy with the oil. It's kind of part of the flavor of good fried rice is that layer of oil that surrounds the individual grains. And once we start to see a little bit of sort of browning, and once we see the rice grains starting to tighten up a little bit, we can go back in with our other ingredients. Little pinch of salt and MSG. This is a light soy sauce, so Chinese soy sauce. You could also use Japanese shoyu. And when we put in the soy sauce, we're gonna go around the edge of the pan. You wanna hear that sort of sizzle immediately so that the soy sauce really sears as opposed to kind of soaking in and making the rice soggy. A little drizzle of sesame oil, roasted sesame oil. Shut off the heat. And we'll finish it off with the scallion greens and some fresh cilantro. Chorizo, corn, and shishito fried rice. There's smokiness from the chorizo, obviously smokiness also from the, excuse me, inhaled some rice. The other day I did a similar thing. I was eating with Wombat. What were we having? Some kind of rice, but he made me laugh. Wombat's my 3-year-old. He made me laugh, and I coughed up rice into my nose, and it was stuck there for like hours. And then like later on at night I sneezed and like, yeah, a bunch of rice came out. Anyhow, all right, chorizo, corn, and shishito fried rice. It gets some really nice smokiness. Both from the smoked paprika in the chorizo, as well as obviously the stir frying process itself gets you some of that wok smokiness. The char in the corn gets nice and sweet and intense. and then the shishito peppers add a little bit of that sort of vegetal grassiness, a little bit of heat. This is one of my favorite fried rice combinations. That said, you know, I like to think of fried rice, this whole technique more as not necessarily just a recipe, but more sort of a blueprint, like a technique, right? It doesn't have to be chorizo. You could use something like bacon. You could use something like salami. You can use something like soppressata, or even, say, guanciale. It doesn't have to be corn. You could use little broccoli florets. You could use cauliflower. You could use Brussels sprouts. You know, you can mix and match sort of your ingredients, and as long as you have sort of the same basic ratio of stuff and use the same basic technique, you're going to end up with something really delicious. So the keys are, when you're stir frying, making fried rice, you want to work in small batches. Stir fry one ingredient at a time. Put it into a bowl as it cooks. Do the rice at the very end, make sure there's enough oil, and make sure that your rice is a day old so that it doesn't stick together. Real high heat, and then add all your ingredients back once the rice is done and toss everything together. Finish it off with a little bit of seasoning. This is salt and MSG, along with some soy sauce and toasted sesame oil. And then some fresh aromatics at the very end. So in this case, it was the scallion greens and the cilantro. All right, chorizo, corn, and shishito fried rice. Guys, gals, non-binary pals. See you next time. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. You can find the full article and recipe along with bonus content and my newsletter for free on my Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more videos like this, or my alternate channel, Kenji Lopez Main, for my dining content. And follow me on Instagram at Kenji López-Alt for daily updates. You can also get signed and personalized copies of any of my books. That's The Food Lab, The Walk, or my children's book, Every Night is Pizza Night, shipped from Book Larder here in Seattle. Find the links to all of this, as well as all of the tools I used in today's video, in the description below. Thanks.